Hello and welcome back to Bold Moves. My name is Wanjiru, and if you're new here, thank you so much for checking us out. Today, I'm going to have a very brave conversation for myself. It's a challenge for me to do this bold thing by having a conversation that is not sort of cute or pretty for general public. But I want to talk about how I have navigated and grieved the expectations I had about how I thought my life would turn out, all while also being super grateful. And I'm going to start off with a quote from the Pastor John Piper that I absolutely love. I'm going to paraphrase it, but I know it generally sounds like that. It says, occasionally weep over the life that you thought you would have, then go wash your face and live the life that you've been given or that God has given you. And where this entire conversation came from was because a friend of mine came over to visit last weekend, and she'd heard me talk about having lost my brother about 4 years ago. And she said, "Hey, how are you doing with that? What's been the hardest thing for you to grieve regarding, your brother's death?" And it was a very heavy question that took me aback. And thankfully, she's the kind of person that invites you in and is not expecting you to say, "Oh, fine." They're not expecting you to go deep. And so I thought about it and I answered the question as truthfully as I could. And I spoke to her about my biggest grief was not seeing my brother live out his full potential. And my brother died in his late 40s after many years of fighting with addiction. And the people that do know him know what an amazing guy he was. And I have so much that I learned from him as I was growing up. He was a bubbly, outgoing personality. He's the one who taught me English. He wasn't the best teacher. He taught me with a pencil or a ruler, and he'd hit me on the knuckles if I got stuff wrong. Not very patient, but a really good teacher nonetheless. And what brought me to that feeling like I don't feel like he lived to his full potential, and I wish, we could sort of turn back time and I'd be like, do over, and he'd get to do all the cool things he wanted to do with his life, was because a day or two before his funeral, I went to a place to print the photo that is really framed for the ceremony. And I couldn't find like super recent photos. And the one that I found where he was sort of looking in the camera that was clear was a picture which must have been taken probably a year or two after he finished high school. He's in this beautiful gray, I think they were called windbreakers or half sweaters, with a nice checked shirt. And he has this light in his eye, like he's gonna conquer the world. And knowing the things I know of what his life ended up being and his fight with alcohol addiction, I looked at that photo and I was like, oh, what I would give for him to just get an opportunity to do life over. And I feel like he spent majority of his adult life sort of trying to right the mistakes and the poor choices he'd made, and we had all of these expectations. He had all of these expectations on how he'd like his life to go. And it feels like, I can only put it in an analogy of a crossroads where you feel like you were on a path, you took a detour, and a couple of steps down, you realize this is not the best route, this is not the best road. And I feel like he spent the rest of his life trying to come back to the crossroad, back to, back after all those poor choices, back to the main road to then take the road that he was originally on. And whether that's his fight with, trying to make money, and he was a great business person. So trying to do business and revive his businesses, trying to build his family and a life with his ex-wife and daughter, which didn't work out. But just it feels like it spent quite a bit of his time sort of trying to get back. It's the only way I can visualize. It's the only way I can explain it to somebody. And that got me to a place where we now started talking with my friend about, the expectations, the life you thought you were gonna have that didn't pan out the way you thought it would be. And we talked a lot, of course, about now that we are here and we are alive, how do we live our life where we go like, I really wanted that. I didn't get that. how do I weep and grieve those expectations, but then also move to a life where I am loving the life I have now. I am grateful for it, and I am in charge of the life that I have right now, which brought me to the John Piper quote, and, occasionally weep, the life you thought you'd have. And so in today's episode, I'll share a bit about my expectations that have not come true, things that I thought I'd do with my life or how my life would turn out. And this is a brave part because it's stuff that I have said out loud probably only recently, and then I'll talk about just the life and how right now I'm full of gratitude for the life I do have, regardless of the things that I was expecting that didn't work out the way they did. And I feel like those two are connected. Like, you can't have true gratitude, true immersion of the life that you have, if you do not start from a place of saying, I grieve the expectations. So let me start with the expectations. I thought I'd have more kids. I wanted more kids. Again, it's something I think I have. This is my first time to say that out loud in public. And I say this for those of you who know us personally, who've listened to previous episodes. You know the story of 5 years of getting the one child that we have. The loss of our daughter Layla, the miscarriage after the blocked tube diagnosis, the IVF cycle that failed, just those 5 years of the journey, and then finally getting Keith. And then just, for me also, the making peace in my heart that there's no other coming. And that's happened probably, I'd say, in the last year or so, just me making peace that that's it. There are no more kids coming. And part of that journey was I had this beautiful little dress, little girl's dress that used to sit in my closet. And until we were moving last year out of Dubai is when I sort of just looked at it and sort of gave up that dream and sort of just packed it with the stuff that we were giving away. And so, so that's my first big admission. I wanted more kids. I thought I'd have more kids. The second thing was with regard to my career. I originally loved to teach. I thought I'd end up in academia. When I just finished my undergraduate, I was the only first class in my campus that year, sort of like valedictorian. And the university used to give opportunities to be a teaching assistant as you did your master's, maybe later done a PhD. I applied. My department chair gave me all the information that I need to do, and I applied, and I pursued it for a couple of months. I'd go and my application could not be found, or something else was going on. And so I pushed down that road, and it never worked out. The second thing was I always wanted to study abroad. For my undergraduate, for my master's, but it never seemed to work out. For undergraduate, I applied to Bates College, an Ivy League school that my sister was teaching at the time. And they were very exclusive and hard to get into, and I got a rejection. And then for my master's, because at the time I was blogging and working very heavily in social media, I wanted to study master's in digital, something digital, advertising or just the social media world. And I missed the academic year, and the scholarships were closed. And at that time, I was already married, and my husband and I had been looking at courses. Maybe we could study together abroad. And one of the things that was clear was that we could only do that if we were on scholarship. And so again, that ship sailed before it even left the harbor. And I did go on to do my master's in communications at University of Nairobi, and I studied alongside really great people, journalists, editors, and a lot of the things that I'm using now in my job about communications and PR, I learned there. And as well, I had the best professors, one who, to date remains a very dear family friend. But those were my expectations. I had hoped to study abroad, probably because I went to high school, in a school where a lot of my classmates did then go on to study abroad afterwards, after high school. And it always felt like I was playing catch up and I couldn't. So those are some of my expectations with regards to career. The last one, again, with career is having run my nonprofit, Still a Mom, for about 7 years. I expected to do that for the rest of my life. And then in 2019, the funding ceased, We hadn't gotten to a place where we were self-sustaining, where the programs that we were charging for money at institutions could pay our bills. And I had to let go of my staff, and I had to let go of the volunteers that we worked with, the counseling center that I had built from the ground up in Nairobi, and then moved to Dubai with my husband as his job moved us. But there's always been a place for grieving still a mom, because I think in my head it was a career I would do for the rest of my life. It was my legacy. I looked forward to changing laws in the government, working on the Employment Act to ensure that women who lost children got an opportunity to get maternity leave or compassionate leave or something of the sort entrenched in the law. I was really hoping to get to a place where we were training medical students on child loss, breaking news, the psychosocial element of loss and death that they would have to, of course, have to deal with patients and the loved ones of patients that they'd lost. So that's somewhere what I thought about the future. I thought of Stilamam going regional and then going to the rest of Africa, which I never got to see happen. And then a little bit closer to home, with regard to marriage, I think 13 years in, one of the biggest lessons I've had to learn is that nobody will love you the way you want to be loved except you and God. And I say that as somebody who has an extremely great partner, a partner who partners. Like my husband truly is, oh man, he's going to listen to this and he's going to be so excited that I complimented him on the podcast. I have a partner who is really reliable, dependable. I travel more than he does for work. And, he's such a great father. He's a really great husband. But it took me a while to adjust my expectations on what I thought, probably love that I missed growing up, that I probably brought those expectations on him, which was not fair. And, just the learning that this is how I had hoped to be loved. And some of that I'm going to have to do for myself, so I am not unloved. I am actually deeply loved and I know it, but it is just the realization that these were my expectations. And we could go into why all of that is, and we can explore my relationship with my late dad who died when I was 10. Like, we could go through that rabbit hole and start to understand why I wanted to be loved X. But that's been another occasionally weep over the expectations. And speaking of this, I had a friend of mine recently. We had this chat. Unfortunately, her marriage hasn't worked the way she hoped it would be, and she's sort of single parenting. And we had that acknowledgement, just to say it loud. I had hoped to be married, to grow old with my spouse. I had hoped to raise kids together, just to say those things out loud, like occasionally weep. And when I say weep, I mean sob, like be super disappointed by how things turned out, and then wash your face. And then on this other end, to go and live the life that you have been given. And so to flip the script on this other end, I was saying that the moment I sort of have grieved those expectations, I feel like my gratitude is so much more for the life that I have. And then I'm more deliberate in loving myself, in loving my husband better, in parenting my son better, in being deliberate with parenting my only child after realizing he's going to be the only one, And I speak about this in a previous episode of, sort of motherhood, things that I've learned along the way in his 8 years of life. So let me take on the other end and say, what are some of the things that I am super grateful for? And I want to start by saying the life I have now, I didn't even dream it. Like there's no, that question of where do you see yourself 8 years, 10 years from now? I didn't see this. Like, God just flipped the script and has just blown my mind. I feel like about 8 or 10 years ago, I hit the ceiling to what my dreams were, in the sense of where I thought we'd live, the kind of car I thought I'd drive, and this is the kind of life I thought I'd have. And I feel like I did that. I hate those dreams. And I remember asking my husband and telling him, it's your fault. It's totally your fault that we have this life. And thank you for your support, but I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do. Like you're forcing me to have new dreams. And that was because he'd gotten me a car that I really wanted, and I was super excited. And I was like, what am I supposed to do now? I knew I need a new dream. But honestly, I feel like from that point on, God has been flexing. Like God has been showing off. And he's like, you and your puny dreams, let me show you what I can do for you. And I never thought, one, that I'd have a child. It's so funny that I wanted more kids. And I've had to grieve the fact that I'm not going to have any more kids. But at the same time, there was a time in my life where I was sure I would not have a child, where the diagnosis was permanently blocked, bilaterally blocked tubes with no option of conception. And so on the other hand, I have this child, I have this life. I am living the life that I have been given, and I'm super grateful for it. On the second side is I have a partner that truly partners, and I already mentioned this, but just the realization that I picked well through God's help, but that my husband is the kind of person who, when the opportunity to relocate for my job came, at the time there were discussions of whether it would be London or Singapore, whatever. And each time he'd be like, babe, let's go. And he'd be like, at what point in your life in which trajectory would you end up in Singapore or in London? Take the opportunity that's been given. Like he was willing to go be jobless and to rediscover and make new friends and look for a job in a new market just to move. He gave up actually a promotion at some point because that's where the job had me in Dubai. And then during the relocation to get to a place where he's like, wherever you're sent, we are going to go. And I have seen firsthand couples who their dreams haven't happened because one of the partners, mostly the guys, decided they didn't want to relocate or they didn't want to move. He didn't want to follow his wife. So that's a thing that I am immensely grateful for. The fact that we plan together, we organize around, we negotiate for jobs, we let the other person know that there's this opportunity that's coming up. What do you think? What are your thoughts? That level of doing life together, I'm extremely grateful for. On the flip side is my career. And that has been, I never ended up teaching. I guest lecture occasionally, and it's been beautiful. Like I get invited to speak to people's class as a guest speaker, and I enjoy that immensely. And I think at some point in my future, I may teach a little bit more consistently because I love to hang around young people and to hear what they're thinking and to be challenged and to teach them the things that I have learned along the way. But at the same time, even with regard to still a mom and it not working out the way I thought it would, and it took a while for my co-founder and I to say, you know what, we got to be at the front end. We had a front row seat to God healing people after they lost their children. We were part of that. We were part of the solution. And we were like, okay, you know what? God can continue to heal people even in our absence. Let's also not be too full of ourselves and to walk away from this nonprofit we build, only for me to come to this other end and get a job where I fund nonprofits, to be somebody who constantly knocked on doors to be given funding for the work I was doing. I get to be on the other side where I have budget. I have to decide where money goes. And it's not something that I take lightly at all. But it's an opportunity. It's such a moment for gratitude for me that I get to do meaningful work. Maybe not on the maternal and newborn health side, but nonetheless building communities, whether that's education programs in India, youth employment programs in Dubai, or responding to earthquakes in Morocco, Turkey. I look at the work that I do, and again, I never dreamt about it, and yet here I am. And I'm super grateful about this. And so when that is my career, parenting, marriage, even traveling, I really didn't think I'd see the world the way I have seen it. And I haven't been to as many of the places as I'd like to. And I hope that, if life allows and I live long enough, I want to see as much of the world as I would like to. But I think my first time in an aircraft, I was probably 25 years old. And so I feel like, and now I'm almost 38. So in the last 10, 12 years, I have gotten an opportunity to see so many countries, whether that's as speaking roles, and even interesting enough, to the point of the fact that I wanted to study in the US. When I was running Still a Mom and I got that grant from Facebook through their community leadership program, I actually got a 5-year visa and a fully paid 1-year sort of trip, like 3 separate trips, to Menlo Park, San Francisco. And I remember thinking, this is where I wanted to go. I wanted to come to the US to study. I am back here, except this time not on a student visa. I'm here on a proper, work visa. I'm here on a, fully paid trip, fully paid program. The first time I remember being in New York and being actually at the Central Park and places I'd seen in the movie, at the Golden Bridge in San Francisco. I traveled to Dallas. Like, I remember thinking, holy crap, the girl who wanted to study abroad could not have imagined that she'd come back, except so much better, like a lot better. And so whether it comes to traveling, seeing the world, getting into a place of decision making in my job, and getting to influence discussions, I am just totally blown away by the life I have now. And this has been an interesting episode. I don't know what I was hoping that you take away from this, but if for nothing else, having heard my story of me saying out loud about things I expected that didn't turn out the way I hoped, please spend some time. I encourage you to spend some time, write down those expectations. Just face it. Just like stare it down, say it loud, weep, absolutely sob, snot included, the life that you thought you'd get. Then wash your face and just grab the one that you have with both hands and leave it with gratitude and be grateful to God. Show up deliberately, show up intentionally from a place of gratitude. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Sometimes it feels like I'm speaking in the void. And so if you are here and you joined me for the episode, thank you for keeping me company.